Photographs are the best evidence that we have of UFOs. The Trindade Isle pictures are some of the best witnessed and best documented of all UFO pictures. They were taken on February 21, 1958, by the professional photographer aboard the Brazilian Navy's ship Almirante Saldanha, then taking part in the International Geophysical Year exercises in the South Atlantic Ocean. The object was observed by 30 crew members and scientific personnel as it flew around and behind the island, re-emerging only to vanish in a few seconds. The then President of Brazil, Juscelino Kubitschek, released the pictures to the press, but now the Brazilian Navy will not release the negatives or comment on the case. The nearest thing that we've had to an official UFO picture in the United States is this B-57 promotional picture made by McDonnell Douglas. The arrow points to the area of our interest, but the picture was first released without the arrow and apparently no knowledge of the extra image that was a part of this professionally prepared photograph. The UFO image shows a classic disc-like unidentified flying object. I believe that this picture is authentic because it was well investigated at the time the UFO image was found, and this after its first release. It was professionally made by people who would have a lot to lose if they were found to be hoaxers. The UFO appears to be disturbing the atmosphere. It has a grainy edge of an object photographed at a distance, but it stands out from the background sufficiently well to show that it is not an anomaly or misinterpretation of the background itself. Another picture, long thought to be authentic by many investigators but which has fallen into recent controversy, is the one taken by Mr. Paul Trent of McMinnville, Oregon in June of 1950. This picture was subjected to an extremely thorough analysis by Dr. William K. Hartman of the University of Arizona and the U.S. Air Force's Condon Committee. His analysis of this photograph is one of the finest examples of UFO photo analysis now in print. A close-up of the McMinnville, Oregon object shows that it is essentially a flat-bottomed, disc-shaped object with an aspect ratio of about 6:1, and a center cupola about as tall as the vehicle is thick. One lone UFO photograph, even if it is authentic, is not an abundance of conclusive evidence that this vehicle exists. Confirmation is needed. And confirmation would seem to have been granted in this second picture, taken by a private pilot while flying over Rouen, France in 1954, some 4 years after the McMinnville, Oregon photograph had been made. Unfortunately, the French pilot has remained anonymous, and no official attempt has been made to locate him and confirm the authenticity of the picture. Nonetheless, this photograph is thought to be authentic by many UFO researchers. Another photograph taken in Oregon on November 22, 1966, was made by a PhD biochemist who prefers to remain anonymous, but is known to several private UFO research organizations. He also reported the incident to the U.S. Air Force, but received no official response. Not only is the witness excellent, but his photograph is of a kind that would be extremely difficult to fake. The witness saw only one object, but photographed 3. The difference between his story and his photograph initially caused both to be rejected by UFO photo analysts. But the camera and the eye are 2 different devices. Why should they necessarily give the same report? In 1972, I received the original negative and camera which had taken the picture, did a thorough analysis on both, and then developed what I call the 2-channel information theory on vision and photography. This work, and considerable speculation beyond, are the subjects of my book, UFOs, the Eye and the Camera. This vehicle appears to be about 30 feet in diameter, is 7½ feet tall, and is capable of vanishing and reappearing in space. My initial analysis appeared in 2 magazines, Photographic magazine in the United States and the Journal of the Royal Photographic Society of Great Britain. The articles drew about 100 responses, but no one refuted the analysis or identified the object. In addition, the articles unearthed several other photographs of this kind, and this one was taken by Mr. Barty Anderson in Alaska on the Russian River on July 5, 1965. Mr. Anderson was a purser for the Scandinavian Airlines system and was preparing to go fishing on an off day. He set up his 35mm camera with an automatic timer to take a picture while he sat in a nearby boat. After tripping the timer, he began to walk to the boat, but saw the UFO rising from the opposite bank, and the vision of the craft riveted Anderson in place. The camera fired automatically, recording 6 indistinct images, while Anderson saw only one. Anderson's camera had a focal plane shutter, which makes its images by moving a slit in front of the unexposed film. This indicates that the craft was actually in several places at the same time. Another picture of a vanishing and reappearing UFO, taken in 1964 by an anonymous photographer, was made in Ventura County, California. The photographer and his brother-in-law had gone on a hike to see the then-new Casitas Dam and Reservoir. Suddenly, they heard great splashing sounds and saw the object coming out of the water. The witness reported that he was so flabbergasted, he was speechless, and in spite of the fact that he was an experienced photographer, only managed to make this one exposure. We've included this photograph in the collection because the object shows several of the features of the vanishing UFO. To be sure, there are differences, but sufficient similarity that we not only include the photograph in this class, but believe it to be authentic. The last of the vanishing UFO pictures to be unearthed by the Oregon Photograph articles was taken by Mr. C. Dwight Gormley near Sedona, Arizona on September 23, 1967 at 1 p.m. Mr. Gormley is a retired school teacher, had gone for a ride in the country and saw what he thought was a water tank sitting in an odd place on the side of a mesa. He was so intrigued with the idea that someone would build a tank in such a strange place, he stopped to photograph it. As he did, the object vanished, but Mr. Gormley's photograph of it includes about 150 images of the craft as it sped away. I believe that this, again, is the vanishing UFO operating in its disappearing, reappearing mode of locomotion at the rate of 10,000 cycles per second. From the investigation that we made on this picture, it was not possible for us to determine the size of the object, but it appears to be in the 30-foot diameter class. However, we were able to tell the size of this UFO, photographed by two 15-year-old boys on February 8, 1973, near Conejo, California, because the object's path was well mapped by the investigator. This object is also in the 30-foot diameter class, and we believe that it is the vanishing UFO, but operating in a more normal aerodynamic mode of flying. We believe that this image is authentic because the incident has been well investigated, and all of the data that the witness and photographer supplied correlate with that we can derive from the image. Most night UFO photographs are of little use to investigators, but this one, taken by Patrick Thrush on December 13, 1974, near Bradenton, Florida, is of special interest because it documents an observation that has been reported by many people who have seen UFOs hovering over lakes and rivers. These UFOs appear to project a luminous tube or beam of light into the body of water for several minutes before they leave. Not only is the observation consistent with that of others, but this craft was seen by 3 independent persons who reported it to local authorities. Easily one of the most famous and certainly best investigated UFO photographs in existence is the first of the 4 images taken by Mr. Rex Heflin, a Santa Ana, California highway inspector who carries a camera in his work. Heflin was driving on the Myford Road in Orange County, California on August 3, 1965, when he saw this craft fly in front of his highway department truck. He pulled off the road, stopped, and began operating his Polaroid camera as quickly as he could make one exposure after another. The craft was flying very slowly, making no sound, but exhibited a wedge-shaped lighted area rotating on its underside which Heflin could see, and which was visible on the original images. Shortly after copies were made and the photos run in several newspapers, Heflin was called upon by a uniformed man who identified himself as from the Air Force. He asked for and received the pictures and has not been heard from since. Heflin's attempts to recover his photographs have met with official silence. The third photograph made by Rex Heflin shows the UFO as it continues on its path. At this point, Heflin was sure that he may have been looking at a secret government aircraft because the El Toro Marine Air Station is only a few miles from the location. However, it now appears that the object did not come from any of our air bases. The last picture that Mr. Heflin made in the sequence is of the aftermath that the device made when it left the scene rather quickly. The investigation of this incident has been one of the most complete in UFO history and has been continued up until very recently. It was first thought that Mr. Heflin was the only person to see this UFO, but it has now been learned that an entire survey crew in the area also saw the vehicle. As well, the best scientists and engineers working on the UFO question in Southern California have investigated this case and all have pronounced it to be authentic. The last authentic UFO picture that I include in this collection is my own. It was taken at sunrise on October 31, 1972, at the top of the Gold Mine ski lift near Big Bear, California. I had been out all night on a UFO stakeout, as several sightings had taken place there over the previous 2 weeks. Through the long night I saw nothing but stars, but at dawn found my eye attracted to what appeared to be a specular reflection from a metallic object in the desert below. As I watched, the object rose and continued to move vertically, accelerating slowly until it started to make a vapor trail. This is when I made the one picture. It continued moving vertically until the vapor trail stopped, and it was only a bright speck in the dawn sky. I followed it until it simply became part of the sky itself, and I have no idea what it was, but it certainly was an unidentified flying object.